Kathryn Johanna Kuhlman was born on May 9, 1907, in the small town of Concordia, Missouri. She came into the world quietly, the daughter of German immigrant parents, raised in a modest home where life was simple and expectations were ordinary. No one looking at that little girl could have imagined that her life would one day touch millions. As a child, Kathryn was shy, reserved, and deeply sensitive. She was not dramatic or outspoken. She often preferred to be alone, listening, observing, thinking. Yet even then, there was a deep awareness within her that her life was meant for God. At the age of 14, during a revival meeting, Kathryn encountered God in a way that permanently altered her direction. It was not excitement or emotion, it was conviction. From that moment, she knew she belonged completely to God. As a teenager, she began preaching in small churches and revival meetings. Many were uncomfortable seeing a young woman preach. Doors closed, invitations disappeared, money was scarce. Some nights she slept hungry, traveling with little assurance of what tomorrow would bring. Still, she continued, driven by obedience rather than approval. As she grew older, her ministry expanded outwardly, but inwardly, something was missing. She loved God deeply, but she relied heavily on effort, planning, and self-strength. And in a vulnerable season, she made a decision that would mark one of the most painful chapters of her life. In 1938, Kathryn married Burroughs A. Waltrip, a fellow evangelist. What later weighed heavily on her conscience was the truth that he had already been married and had children. Though he divorced his wife before marrying Kathryn, peace immediately left her life. She later admitted that she knew she had stepped outside of God's will. The marriage brought no joy, no rest, and no spiritual freedom. Her ministry weakened. Her confidence faded. Privately, Kathryn struggled with guilt, confusion, and sorrow. She tried to hold everything together: the marriage, the ministry, the public image, but inside, she was unraveling. By the mid-1940s, the marriage ended. Kathryn walked away, not victorious, but humbled. She never justified the decision. She never blamed others. She called it disobedience, and she carried the weight of it quietly for the rest of her life. Years later, Waltrip would die, but there is no record that his death triggered any revival or spiritual release. Kathryn never spoke of it that way. After the separation, her ministry did not immediately recover. In fact, it nearly disappeared. She preached in small, unimpressive meetings. Sometimes the crowds were thin. Sometimes there was little response. She later said she went through what felt like 1,000 deaths. Not because God abandoned her, but because God was stripping her. Kathryn stopped asking God to restore her ministry. She stopped bargaining. She stopped striving. Her prayer became simple and honest. If God never used her again, she would still love him. She surrendered not just her sin, but her ambition. She surrendered her desire to be known, to be powerful, to be successful. It was during this quiet, broken season that her relationship with the Holy Spirit changed completely. Before, she had preached about God. Now, she learned to depend on him. She once described herself as nothing more than the Holy Spirit's errand girl. In 1948, she began holding meetings again, eventually leading to services at Carnegie Hall in New York City on July 4th. People came not because of advertising, but because something was happening. During worship, people testified of healings. Tumors disappeared. Hearts were strengthened. Deaf ears opened. Doctors confirmed cases they could not explain. Kathryn never touched the people. She often stood still, saying softly, "Please, don't miss the presence of the Holy Spirit." As the years passed, the testimonies increased. In the early 1950s, documented cases included individuals healed of heart disease and long-term physical conditions during her services. By the 1960s, her television program I Believe in Miracles reached millions, yet she lived simply, avoided luxury, fasted privately, and spent hours alone in prayer. She consistently told people, "Don't look at me, look at Jesus." Ironically, while thousands were healed, Kathryn herself suffered physically. From the mid-1950s onward, she battled heart disease. She experienced weakness and pain, but continued ministering as long as strength allowed. She never claimed that healing was guaranteed for everyone, including herself. She believed in God's power, but also His sovereignty. On February 20th, 1976, Kathryn Kuhlman died in Tulsa, Oklahoma, at the age of 68. She passed quietly, the woman through whom so many had been healed, finally at rest. She left behind no children, no spouse, no fortune. But she left a legacy of surrender. Her story is not one of flawlessness, but of transformation, of mistakes redeemed, of weakness turned into strength. And her life still speaks that God is not looking for the strong, but the surrendered, not the impressive, but the available, and that when a life is fully yielded, God can do the extraordinary through the ordinary.